Hi, now let's take a look at question 32. Ganesh collected 3 different types of inedible seeds, X, Y, and Z. He wanted to find out how easily these different seeds are dispersed by animals. When it comes to seed dispersal by animals, there are usually 2 different kinds. The first kind usually involves edible fruits. These edible fruits tend to be juicy, sweet smelling, and brightly colored to attract animals to eat them. Now, the key feature about these edible fruits is that they contain indigestible seeds. If the indigestible seeds are large, when the animal feeds on the fruit, the animal either spits or throws the seeds away from the parent plant. If the indigestible seeds are small, when the animal feeds the fruit, it is likely that the seeds will be swallowed by the animal. As the animal travels further away from the parent plant, the small indigestible seeds are then passed out together with the waste material of the animal at a further location. Now that is for the first kind of seed dispersal by animals. The second kind of seed dispersal by animals usually involves inedible seeds. These inedible seeds tend to have stiff hairs or hook-like structures to actually hook onto the fur of the animal. As such, when an animal brushes past these seeds, the seeds actually get caught on the fur of the animal's body. What happens is that as the animal travels further away from the parent plant, the seeds eventually fall off the animal's body and get dispersed at a further location. So for this question, it is likely that they are referring to the second method of seed dispersal by animals. How do we know? That is because the question tells us that seed X, Y, and Z are actually inedible seeds. So what did Ganesh do next? He then placed 20 seeds of each type into an uncovered box and he covered the box with a furry towel. Now what do you think this furry towel represents? The furry towel actually represents the fur of the animal. So for part A, the question states that based on the results shown, what is the relationship between the number of seeds stuck onto the towel and how easily the seeds are dispersed by animals? So looking at the results, for seed X, we observe that out of 20 seeds, none of them was stuck onto the towel. This means that seed X must be the least easily dispersed by animal. So I'm going to write this here. Because none of it was stuck onto the towel, we can infer that seed X is the least easily dispersed by animal. Now, for seed Y is the total opposite. Out of 20 seeds, 17 of them actually got stuck onto the towel. This means that seed Y was the most easily dispersed by animals. How do we know that? That is because, once again, the furry towel represents the fur of the animal. So in this case, I will write seed Y is most easily dispersed by animals. So, can we infer the relationship between the number of seeds stuck onto the towel and how easily the seeds are dispersed by animal? Yes, we can then say that the greater the number of seeds stuck onto the towel, the easier the seeds are dispersed by animals. And that is our answer for part A. The greater the number of seeds stuck onto the towel, the easier the seeds are dispersed by animals. For part B, what conclusion can you draw from the experiment? So when it comes to drawing conclusions from the experiment, we need to identify the aim of the experiment first. So earlier on, we know that Ganesh wanted to find out how easily seed X, Y, and Z are dispersed by animals. So we need to be comparing the 3 different seeds in our answer. So over here, we have already established that based on the number of seeds stuck onto the towel, we know how easily the seeds are dispersed. So in this case, seed Y was the most easily dispersed by animals because most seeds were stuck onto the towel. The next one will be seed Z because 5 seeds were stuck onto the towel. And finally, we have seed X with 0 seeds stuck onto the towel. Hence, it is the least easily dispersed by animals. So how will we phrase our conclusion? We will say that seed Y can be dispersed by animals the easiest, followed by seed Z and then seed X. For part C, the question requires us to state one characteristic or structure that can be found on seed X and Y. So looking at seed Y, we know that most of it was stuck onto the furry towel, and the furry towel represents the fur of the animal. So earlier on, we have already established that in order for the seed to be stuck onto the fur of the animal, it needs to have either stiff hairs or a hook-like structure. So a characteristic of seed Y could be that it has stiff hairs or it has a hook-like structure. Now let's take a look at seed X. Now for seed X, we know that none of it got stuck onto the towel. However, are we able to conclude that it is dispersed by wind, water, or even splitting? No, we cannot conclude that based on the experiment and our observations. What we can only conclude is that seed X is unlikely to be dispersed by animals. As such, a characteristic or structure that is not found on seed X would be stiff hairs or a hook-like structure. So over here for part C, I will say that for seed X, it has no stiff hairs, and for seed Y, it has stiff hairs.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found this video useful, do give us a thumbs up. If you want to check out the other videos we have made, do click on the links on the right hand side. Last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!